on 24th Street.
Welcome to the Cop Shop with FPD. I'm Georgia Allen. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Farmington Police Department, and I am hosting alone this morning. Chief is out doing, I don't know, whatever the Chief's busy schedule's got him doing today. So I am here with my guest, Judge Sarah Weaver. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
I appreciate you coming in. So I had the opportunity to listen to you speak at a Redcoats meeting, I think it was earlier this month. And so I liked some of the information that you shared with the group about the different types of cases and what courts they're held in, and people were really engaged. They had a lot of questions, and so I thought, oh, wow, they've got a lot of questions. I'm sure, our listeners have those same questions, so a lot of people, So could you start out with that, sharing, you used a description kind of to go through, district court judge and magistrate court judge.
Sure thing. Absolutely. So the way that I picture it is you've got your first court, you've got municipal court, which can only sentence up to a certain amount of time in jail. And then you have magistrate court, which is over that, which can only sentence up to 364 days in jail. And then over that, you have district court, which can sentence someone up to life in prison. And then over that, and I kind of picture it like a little umbrella, a bigger umbrella, bigger umbrella. Sure. Then over district court, you have the Court of Appeals, and it's their job to review what we've done in district court and tell us where we've done well or where we've done poorly. And then over that, you have the New Mexico Supreme Court, who tells the Court of Appeals where they've done well or where they've done poorly. There's some cases that do go directly from district court to the Supreme Court. Then they make a decision, and then over that you have the federal 10th Circuit. Then over that you have the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. So it's a bunch, starting with the little umbrella, working your way up.
Sure. And then some cases, so like with a felony, say it starts in magistrate court, correct?
Yes.
And that's with preliminary hearing, correct?
It is. It's with the first appearance, and it's with a preliminary hearing. And a preliminary hearing, you look at two things. It's a determination of probable cause, which means basically, is it more likely than not that the defendant did it and that it was him that committed the crime. So the standard, it's called the burden of proof. Mm-hmm. The standard is very different. If the judge finds probable cause, then it gets bound over to district court. And then in district court, you start again with an arraignment and then a pretrial conference and then a jury trial, or if anywhere along the way the defendant chooses to enter a plea, then that's done.
Okay. So what's the difference? Because here we don't have the grand jury. So the prelim is in place of that. Is that correct? Some places have the grand jury.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And we used to have a grand jury here many, many moons ago, in I believe 98, 99. The grand jury is also a determination of probable cause, and if they find it, then they issue what's called an indictment. Okay. When there's a preliminary hearing and probable cause is found, then a criminal information is entered. There's a lot of legal names that can be really, really confusing. Sure. So for me, when I learned it, I just used the jail time to kind of discern the different levels of court. And what it means is these courts have different jurisdiction over you. And what jurisdiction means is it means power over the person. Okay. So if you're charged with a felony that can send you to prison for 10 years, you're not going to be heard in municipal court.
Sure.
Make sense?
So those are little minor things. The traffic, I think they do shoplifting there, some other, I think battery, I think you can charge in a municipal court, and some kind of pretty minor stuff, right?
DUI, things like that.
Oh yeah, DUI. So now is it only a first DUI that you can send through municipal court?
So municipal court, this is where it can get a little more confusing. Municipal court and magistrate court can have what's called concurrent jurisdiction, meaning they can hear cases at the same time. And for instance, in Farmington, in Aztec, and Bloomfield, it is the choice of the police department where they want to file their DWIs. If you're looking at someone who's facing a year from their DUI, you can't file in municipal court. You have to file in magistrate court because it's up to 364 days.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. So,
you sure?
Right? No,
I'm trying.
I got it. I got it down. I know. having worked as an advocate before, of course, I had to kind of learn all that because the domestic violence cases and sexual assaults and stuff. But I know it was very confusing for people. And another area that was confusing is they would have, a lot of times victims would file an order of protection or a restraining order. And so a lot of times they go to court for that and think somehow it had to do with the criminal case as well. Does that make sense? And it was kind of a separate piece. And then explaining that the order of protection is more like a civil, but then if you violate it, it's a criminal, correct? So
yes, and then that is confusing because you have the orders of protection that are done before a domestic violence commissioner. Now, the basis of those order of protections can be criminal, which is basically a different system, for lack of a better word, and that's one of the ones that start and stay in magistrate or magistrate to district court. But then you have the DV order, which is commonly called, or order of protection, sure, operating separately. And then if you want to make it a little more confusing, if people are filing for a divorce or custody action because of the criminal action, then you have the criminal, you have the DV, and you have a DM, which is the code for a domestic matter. So you potentially could have 3 different things going in 3 different courtrooms.
And so when you've got all that stuff going on in those courtrooms, is there different things? So, I remember sitting in court with petitioners and the commissioner talking about there was some things that they couldn't touch on in the restraining order hearing because of the criminal case. So can you explain that a little bit? The testimony and stuff that they would hear, there was like an issue. So if there was still a criminal case that was being heard in magistrate court or district court or wherever, there was stuff, I know that it was limited to what she would hear or whatever, because does it affect the other case somehow, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, you have a right against self-incrimination, which means in that criminal court, the state has the burden of proving you guilty. Because we are Americans, you can go into a criminal court and not say a word. The state has the burden of proving you guilty. If you choose to open your mouth, then in some situations you may be waiving your Fifth Amendment right. So think about the criminal case over here, and then we have the domestic violence case. If the basis of the domestic violence charges are the criminal actions, if the person wants to talk about it in the domestic violence case or the order for protection, it can be used against them in the criminal case. So what you see is judges or commissioners saying, you know what, you have a Fifth Amendment right. I am not going to question you about this. It needs to be protected, because I know sometimes people can be very frustrated with judges, but we have a lot of rules we have to follow, and the big one is the Constitution. So we need to make sure that the people who appear in front of us, that their rights are protected. And there's rights on both sides. There's victims' rights and there's defendants' rights.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I know, talking about that, it gets frustrating. You see, in the day and age of social media, everybody has their opinion out there in a lot of cases, and some of the ones, like the compound down in, was it Taos, I think that was happening, there was a lot about that, like, why did this judge do this, and, why did they let them out? But there's those rules, right? And you guys can't change the rules, you can't.
It's a really hard situation. I can't talk about a particular case under the rules of judicial conduct. I have my own opinion? Absolutely, but I can't talk about it. But going to what you're saying about the rules, it is very frustrating because we take an oath. And every judge I've met takes the oath very seriously, that we are to enforce the laws. We don't get to create the laws. We don't get to apply, well, I like you, I don't like you, I'm going to apply them kind of randomly. That's not our job. Sure. And it's not an easy job at times. Sometimes it's hard and sometimes tough stuff happens. So there will be decisions that some people will not understand. I feel like it's part of my job as a judge to make sure that everyone in my courtroom understands why I'm deciding the way I'm deciding, and those are called findings. Sure. So I do try to take the time to explain it. I mean, at the end of the day, I took this job because I wanted to serve the community, and I think that's part of serving the community, is making sure that they understand, I may not agree with you, sir or ma'am, this is the reason I didn't. And then they have remedies. If they don't like what I did, they have remedies, which is a method to try to get me to reconsider or someone else to.
Sure. Okay. So, can you share some of, we were talking before we went on the air about some of the juvenile cases you guys hear and how that works, because that's a different type of court
It
and
is.
the system then, and kind of even more confusing than the adult system.
It is. There's, as I stated, we have that criminal, we have the domestic violence, we have the domestic matters, and then we have a couple of different type of juvenile cases. We have what's called a JQ case, which is sequestered where CYFD is involved, and then we have what's called a JR case, which is where a juvenile is charged with a criminal. Judge Marsh is a fellow judge of mine. We split that caseload and we deal with different things. So I will hear those, and I also handle part of what's called the specialty programs for the court, and it's drug and wellness court is what I deal with.
Okay. And is that, so is there a certain type of case that you like hearing over others, where you feel you're making a bigger impact, I guess, particular types of cases, whether it's the kid stuff, the adults?
That's a really good question. I really like the juvenile cases because a lot of the juvenile cases you see parents who are in tough situations and maybe they haven't passed on the best advice or guidance, or maybe they don't know how to parent these juveniles. Now, these juveniles are in trouble. And under the Children's Code, it's different than the Adult Code. Our mandate is to do what's in the best interest of the child. That is different than when you commit an adult crime, you are held accountable through your sentence. So with that difference, we are able to provide services to the families, and not the court, but I'm able to order the services to be provided,
Okay.
where maybe a parent needs a parenting class. Maybe they need an assessment. One thing we've done over the past few months, which is pretty cool, we've started in conjunction with the Sheriff's Office and Juvenile Probation a Social Media 101 class.
Oh, nice.
A lot of parents don't know how to monitor their child's usage on the internet.
Sure.
And so
Well, there's so many of them right now.
Oh.
There's so many platforms.
Huge, huge, huge. It's not just a phone. I mean, and there's so many apps, and the apps are hidden. So what we're doing is we're mandating these parents go to these classes and they learn, and they take a little bit of the power back and the control back from the kids. And, you know, we try to make it a little light about it, but the kids don't like it. They don't like their parents having that education.
And they have their little codes, how they say stuff on
They do.
there, and it's, okay.
They do, and this way the parents are able to monitor them, because what happens sometimes when families are struggling, either financially, because of their history, or for whatever reason, is there's a power shift where the kid kind of becomes in charge of the parent, or the kid is doing their own. So I feel like in the juvenile court, and this is my personal passion, I feel like we can make a real difference. We don't all the time. You know, and I'm certainly not perfect. I try my best to do the best job I can every day. Sometimes we miss the mark, but man, Georgette, when we hit the mark and we help a kid and you see the difference in that child, you see them come into court with their shoulders back and their head up and looking you in the eyes, and they're proud of themselves. And a lot of these kids aren't told that they matter. A lot of these kids aren't told that they're important. A lot of these kids don't understand when you make a bad choice, there's a bad consequence. But when you make a good choice, there's a good consequence.
Sure.
So that's what we try to provide through the JR as well as the specialty programs in the
Well,
court.
and it seems like that's, you know, in the long run and the outcome, they're having a more positive experience through that, the juveniles, rather than just, you know, you did this and here you're in trouble. But when they're coming, you said, you know, they're coming to court and they're standing up tall and they're, you know, they're feeling proud. They're getting that kind of also a positive reward, I guess, off of that, and having a better experience than just here, you know, you're in trouble and there's been nothing done to change the situation. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, and a lot of it's the stepping in and changing the situation. If you don't do that, they're going to continue. And do we get every child? No. And is every child a happy-go-lucky story? No. What I try to be for those kids is I try to be stability. And the way I explain it to them is I know your home life might have some issues. I know you may not know where you're going to get your food. You know, you may not have been in school for a year and a half. But I'm going to be the most stable thing in your life. So every day, every week when you come to my court, you need to understand that when I say something, I mean it. And when you don't do it, you get a sanction. And our sanctions start with the community garden, or scooping horse manure at Browning Park, or doing an endurance run. And then you start to look at detention. Detention is not an option that I want. It is an option I will do if a child needs. And that's the hard part of my job.
Okay.
You may not want to do it, but sometimes the child needs it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But you start with these other avenues first and lead into that.
Trying to get them to understand that every choice you make has a consequence. And if you think about a lot of what we do in our lives, it really, truly breaks down to that. If you treat someone well, they're probably going to treat you well. If you're rude to someone, they may be rude back to you.
Sure.
You know, there's an action and a reaction.
Oh, yeah. And if you don't learn those things early on in your childhood, you go out into the real world and you get that slap in the face. Oh, it's, here's the real world, and there's a consequence for that. So it's so important. It's positive work that you guys are doing up there. So
it is important, and it's not the court trying to parent. We're not trying to do that.
Sure.
But sometimes parents need a little help. Sometimes they need someone to come along beside them and help them teach that child, stop doing that. And when you make that bad choice, there will be this consequence. So when I'm talking about the court being stability, that's what I'm talking about. We just need to be consistent across the board. And like I said, I wish I could tell you every court hearing was terrific and happy, and it's not.
It's not realistic, though. Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah.
And are we going to make a positive impact on every child? No. But for me, do I try every day to just get that 5 seconds where I can get that child to look at themselves as someone who matters, and when they start to care about themselves, they behave differently.
Oh, you're doing a lot of good work.
Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. So really quick, we're going to get into, you are a write-in candidate.
I am.
So we've got about 5 minutes left, so let's talk about that so everybody knows when they go out there to cast their vote. If they choose to vote for you, they need to do this through a write-in.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a long story, and I laugh because it's kind of a funny story. It's crazy I have myself in this situation. But I am a write-in candidate. I do not have an opponent, but yet I could potentially lose to myself, which I find that kind of funny. I have to get a certain number of votes. I have to get 2% of the last gubernatorial election for San Juan and McKinley County. If I don't get 2% of the vote, I don't win, even though I don't have an opponent.
Okay. And that number is roughly
900.
Okay, 900. Yeah.
That's the magic number, and so that's why I've been meeting with people, talking to. I definitely enjoy doing things like this, but that's why I've been hustling and probably bugging way too many people, because no matter what happens, I want to put the effort in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to educate people, because it's 2 steps. The 2 steps, I had a slogan contest. I did. It was so cheesy, but I did it.
Did you do it on social media? Is that
I
why
did.
You put it out there?
I did. I did it on Facebook, and it was awesome, and people were invested and cared. So the winner of the slogan was "Take the trouble, fill in the bubble, write in Judge Sarah Weaver."
I love it.
It's 2 steps. You have to fill in the bubble. If you don't, the vote doesn't count.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
And if you write in Sarah Weaver, or just write in Sarah, the vote might or might not count.
Okay.
If you fill in the bubble and you write in Bob Jones, it's not going to count.
Not going to count. So has to be the bubble, fill in the bubble.
Right.
Write in Sarah Weaver.
Right.
Something really close to that.
Right.
Can't quite remember. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to
so
spell Sarah perfectly. You don't have to spell Weaver perfectly. You just keep it kind of close.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you want to share about your platform? Why people, I'm sure you get this question, why people should vote for you?
I am asking for people's support because this is something that I have a passion for, and I believe that if you're a judge with an attitude of service to the community, listen, I shop in the same stores of the people who are listening to your show. I want to be able to show myself in public with my head held high that I did the best I could. I don't ever claim to be perfect, but what I want to do is I want to serve my community. I want to treat the litigants, which are the people who come in front of me, their attorneys, the people who come in front of me, with respect, with compassion, but also offer well-reasoned, thoughtful decisions, which means giving them the decision as quickly and correctly as possible.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great great platform. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in and sharing a little bit about the system.
I hope it made sense. I
It's
hope it
good.
made
It's a
sense.
little confusing for people, I know. Well, and I work at the PD, but it's still, and then I haven't been doing it for a while, so, something completely different. I'm never in court anymore, so, you kind of forget stuff after a while. I'm not in the middle of the mix anymore, so, but I appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much, and good luck. And
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me here, and I would just encourage people to vote. First and foremost, vote.
Absolutely.
And if they feel like supporting me, I really appreciate it.
And again, if you want to support Sarah Weaver, fill in the bubble, write in Sarah Weaver.
There you go. There you go.
Until next time, we're out of here. Thanks. The Slowdown Farmington campaign. We're asking citizens to join the campaign and serve as advocates for their community by reminding others to slow down and take their time, not a life. Participation is easy. Stop by the police department or city hall and pick up a Slowdown Farmington sign to display in your yard. Snap a photo of you, your family, or your pet next to the sign and share it on social media using hashtag #SlowdownFarmington. The Farmington Police Department, your department, our community.